There's a specific kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. It's the tired you get from managing everything. Managing your image, managing the future, managing other people's reactions, managing outcomes you can't guarantee. You can feel it in the body. A jaw that won't unclench. A mind that won't stop rehearsing. A nervous system that's always slightly braced, like something is about to go wrong. And most people call that normal. Taoism looks at that kind of life and says something quietly radical. You're living like you're in a constant argument with reality. Not because you're broken, not because you're weak, because you've been trained to believe that peace is something you earn by controlling enough things. So you push for clarity, push for certainty, push for progress, push for people to behave, push for your emotions to get in line, push for life to match the picture in your head. And when it doesn't, you push harder. Taoism offers another option. Not a hack, not a trick, a different way of moving. The old Taoists called it Wu Wei. People hear Wu Wei and think it means doing nothing, and they reject it immediately. Because you have responsibilities, you have goals, you have bills, you have a life. But Wu Wei isn't laziness. Wu Wei is non-forcing. It's action without the internal violence. It's the difference between pushing a locked door until your shoulder hurts and realizing there's a handle. Wu Wei is the handle. And to be clear, Taoism is a huge tradition, philosophical and religious. But what we're talking about here is the philosophical heart of it. The Taoist classics that teach alignment, simplicity, and non-forcing. The Tao is the way, not a rule, not a commandment. More like the grain of wood. If you cut with the grain, the blade moves clean. If you cut against it, everything fights you. Taoism says, there is a grain to reality, and most suffering comes from living like there isn't. Now, Taoism doesn't explain this like a textbook. It explains it like a doorway you have to walk through. It tells stories. So let's start with one that feels almost too simple. A man is crossing a river in a small boat. It's foggy, quiet. Then, another boat drifts straight into him and slams the side of his boat. If that other boat has a person in it, what happens? Anger. He shouts. He points. He blames. He starts a whole war in his chest. But if he looks up and sees the other boat is empty, no rage, no heat, he just adjusts his course. Same collision, different suffering. The Taoists love this story because it reveals something uncomfortable. A huge portion of your stress is not caused by what happens. It's caused by what you assume is happening. Your mind adds a person to the boat. Your mind adds intention, disrespect, meaning, insult. Your mind turns a bump into a verdict about the world, and then you live inside that verdict. Wu Wei starts when you notice how often you're fighting an empty boat. You're fighting your imagination. You're fighting your predictions. You're fighting your interpretations. So Taoism asks, what if you met life the way you meet the empty boat? Not as a personal attack, but as a shift in the water. Adjust. Breathe. Continue. That's the first Taoist lesson. Don't turn everything into a feud. Now, this is where people think Taoism is telling you to become indifferent. It isn't. It's telling you to become accurate. Because accuracy is calmer than assumption. And once you start seeing life more accurately, you start wasting less energy, which is the entire Taoist game. Energy is your most precious currency. Not money, not status. Your life force. And forcing is expensive. Forcing burns you. It burns you in conversations where you need to be understood. It burns you in relationships where you need certainty. It burns you in work where you need recognition. It burns you in your own head. where you need to feel in control. Taoism is the art of not wasting your fire. Now let's step closer to Wu Wei. A lot of Taoist wisdom revolves around water, not because it's poetic, but because it's instructive. Water has a strange power. It doesn't argue. It doesn't try in the way we try, but it arrives. It moves. It adapts. It persists. It doesn't win by force. It wins by being impossible to trap. And that leads to another Taoist story. This one is famous because it sounds like a joke, but it isn't. A carpenter is traveling through a village and sees a giant, twisted, ugly tree. The tree is enormous, but its wood is useless. Too knotted to cut cleanly, too warped to make boards, too misshapen to build anything valuable, so nobody touches it. The tree stays standing, year after year. And the point is brutal. The tree survives because it doesn't fit the world's demands. It's spared because it isn't useful in the way the world defines useful. Taoism isn't telling you to be useless. It's pointing at a trap. When you become useful to everyone, you get consumed. When you live only as a tool, an output machine, a role, a performance, you get cut down. Wu Wei has something to do with protecting your natural shape. Not sanding yourself into a product, not optimizing yourself into exhaustion. Just because you can be used doesn't mean you should offer yourself up. Sometimes, the most Taoist thing you can do is remain ungrabbable, unforced, unowned. Now, if Taoism stopped here, it would just be calming philosophy. But Taoism goes deeper. It has a hard truth. Your desire to control everything is not strength, it's fear. Not all ambition is fear, not all effort is fear, but the tight, frantic kind, the kind that feels like your chest is always slightly tense, that's fear trying to wear armor. Wu Wei isn't about shutting down effort, it's about removing fear from effort, doing the same work, with a different nervous system. And there's a Taoist image for this too. It's called the uncarved block. The uncarved block is simple, whole, natural, not improved, not decorated, not turned into a commodity. The Taoists weren't anti-skill. They weren't anti-growth. They were warning you about a specific danger. When you constantly carve yourself into what the world wants, you lose your original substance. You become a performance. Wu Wei is partly a return to the uncarved block, a return to being natural again. Not sloppy, natural, not fake calm, real calm. Now here's where the Taoists become very practical. Because be natural sounds nice until you're in the middle of real life. Someone disappoints you. A plan collapses. Your work doesn't land. You feel behind. What does Wu Wei do there? Taoism answers with a story that's deeply associated with Taoist thinking, even though it comes from a later Chinese text influenced by Daoism. An old man's horse runs away. The neighbors say, "Terrible luck." The old man says, "Maybe." The horse returns later, bringing wild horses with it. The neighbors say, "Great luck." The old man says, "Maybe." His son tries to ride one of the wild horses, falls, and breaks his leg. Terrible luck. Maybe. Then soldiers arrive to draft young men for war. They see the son's broken leg and leave him behind. Great luck. Maybe. This isn't Taoism being smug. This is Taoism teaching a discipline that's almost impossible for modern people. Stop pretending you can judge the whole story from one chapter. Most suffering comes from instant conclusions. This is the end. This ruins everything. This proves I'm not good enough. This proves people can't be trusted. This proves I'm behind. Wu Wei doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you stop building a courtroom in your mind every time life changes shape. You let events be events, then you respond. And response is different than reaction. Reaction is fast, tight, defensive. Response is slower, cleaner, more accurate. Wu Wei is response. Now, this part matters. Wu Wei doesn't remove action. It changes your relationship to action. Here's a way to feel it. Think about the difference between learning something new and being truly good at it. In the beginning, everything is forced. You overthink. You grip. You tense up. You're trying to control each step because you don't trust yourself yet. But when you become skilled, something shifts. You stop micromanaging every movement. You move more simply. You stop trying so hard. And yet, you become more effective. Taoism loves this. There's a famous story about Cook Ding, a butcher carving an ox. He doesn't hack at it. He doesn't fight it. He moves through the natural spaces, following the structure, letting the blade go where it can go cleanly. And because he doesn't force it, his knife stays sharp. That's a life lesson. When you stop forcing, you stop dulling yourself. Most people are living with a dull blade, not because life is impossible, because they're sawing through everything with tension. And that's why Wu Wei isn't just calm. Wu Wei is efficiency, minimum effective effort, right pressure, right timing, right direction. Now I want to give you something you can actually use, because Taoism can sound like fog if it stays abstract. So here's a Taoist filter, different from Stoicism, but just as practical. When you're stressed, ask, am I using strength where softness would work? That's it. Because most people default to force. They force clarity in conversations, when softness would invite honesty. They force progress in work, when softness would allow patience. They force certainty in relationships, when softness would allow trust to grow naturally. They force themselves to be fine, when softness would let the feeling pass through and dissolve. Softness isn't weakness. Softness is not adding extra tension. Wu Wei is choosing the minimum effective pressure, like a musician who knows exactly how hard to press a key. Not more, just enough. Now here's the part most people miss. Wu Wei isn't only about how you move, it's about how you empty your mind so you can move clearly. And Zhuangzi tells a story where a student asks how to become fit for the way. In the story, the teacher says something like, "Don't listen only with your ears. Don't listen only with your mind. Listen with your spirit. Empty, waiting, open. Because the way gathers in emptiness." That's the Taoist practice often called fasting of the mind or fasting of the heart. Not fasting from food, fasting from mental noise, from constant commentary, from the compulsive need to label, judge, and control. Because when your mind is crowded, you can't see the handle. When your mind is crowded, you only know one move: push harder. But when your mind gets quiet, even a little, something becomes obvious. The next clean action reveals itself. So here's the practice. When you feel that tightness, when you feel yourself pushing, do this. First, locate the force. Where is it? Is it in your breath? Are you holding it? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your stomach? Second, name what you're trying to control. Not in a dramatic way, just honestly. I'm trying to control how they see me. I'm trying to control the outcome. I'm trying to control the timeline. I'm trying to control the feeling. Third, reduce the pressure by one notch. Not zero, not become enlightened. One notch. Exhale a little longer. Drop the shoulders. Unclench the jaw. Then do something very Taoist. Take the smallest clean action available. Not the grand move, not the frantic move, the clean move, a short message, one focused task, a walk, a pause before you speak, a boundary said once without arguing, a choice made without needing applause. Wu Wei often looks boring from the outside, but inside, it's powerful. because it prevents waste. And waste is what ruins people. Not effort, waste. Now, to close this, I want to say what Taoism is really offering you. It's offering you a life that isn't built on constant internal pressure, because pressure creates a certain kind of person. A person who can't rest without guilt. A person who can't be present without planning. A person who can't enjoy without checking what it means. Wu Wei creates a different kind of person. A person who can act without panic. A person who can adapt without collapsing. A person who can accept change without turning it into catastrophe. A person who can move through life without being in a constant fistfight with it. Taoism doesn't promise you control. It promises you something better. A way to live that doesn't require control to feel okay. And when you stop forcing, you don't become passive. You become precise. You stop rushing into the wrong doors. You stop exhausting yourself in the wrong battles. You start moving like someone who understands timing. So here's the Taoist lesson. In one line, you don't need to overpower life. You need to stop resisting its shape. Because the moment you stop adding tension, you discover something that's been true the entire time. Life is already moving, and you can move with it, cleanly, quietly, effectively, without losing yourself in the struggle.